Most people forget 99% of the marketing they see by the end of the day, so let's fix that. If you've ever done a study of the Savannah Bananas, you know that they got to where they are because the owner was willing to walk onto the baseball pitch in a bright yellow tuxedo. And one of the reasons that it stood out is not just because it's a bright yellow tuxedo, but also because it was so unexpected, and then he also tied it into what he was doing. So today, we're going to talk about the neuroscience of how do you make your marketing unforgettable. Before we can talk about how to make things unforgettable, we need to talk about why most marketing gets lost. First and foremost, it's important to understand that the brain is wired to filter out whatever feels irrelevant or safe to ignore. Your brain is literally getting billions of stimuli every single day. It cannot keep track of all of it. It has a thing called change blindness built in, where if it is getting a stimuli that feels irrelevant or non-threatening, it just automatically cuts it. Our brains are constantly managing something called the cognitive load. The cognitive load is basically that our brains only have so much capacity at any given time. And just like a computer, we have softwares or programs or things that our brain needs to keep doing, like making sure that your heart keeps beating and your lungs keep working, that have to happen. And that's not optional. So your brain is always going to make sure it has enough capacity to ensure that your non-optionals keep happening. This is kind of like when you pull up Task Manager on your computer and you realize there's a whole bunch of programs running that you had no idea were even there. So if most brains are constantly trying to figure out what is worth actually drawing the user's attention to in this limited cognitive load capacity, your job as the marketer has to become, how do you make sure your marketing is something that their brain goes, yes, we need to make sure we pull their attention here. So what are the 3 most important things to remember if you want to lean on neuroscience to make sure your marketing messaging is sticky? Number 1 is emotion. Now, I talk about this a lot with the violin in that I often talk about how a song is more memorable when it is played with emotion. I can play a song straight, or I can play it with emotion. And when I play it with emotion, it's a lot more memorable. It's a lot better overall. Our brains are primed and programmed to remember emotion because when we experience things like surprise or joy or excitement, that can often be life-changing. And so the brain goes, hey, emotion needs our attention. Number 2 is repetition. Repetition helps move information from short-term memory to long-term memory. And if you're ADHD or your audience is ADHD, you may need a little bit more repetition than most. This is where it's so important to know what your overall messaging is and then make sure you're able to communicate it a lot of different ways so that you're not saying the same thing over and over and over and causing change blindness, but you are saying the same thing in a bunch of different ways. And so that becomes a lot more memorable. And number 3 is storytelling. Stories activate the brains in so many different ways. We are a storytelling culture. We have been driven and thrived on stories. This is how we communicated important information from the caveman days. And so our brains, again, have been programmed to remember stories as being full of important information. This is why when I talk about marketing messaging, I talk about the fact that your marketing messaging isn't a tagline and it isn't what you do. It's the story that you're telling people throughout your marketing. For example, with Grow Disrupt, our story is that our guests, our people, are incredible, passionate visionaries who are improving the lives of those around them. And in that process, they oftentimes lose sight of who they are, what makes them amazing, and what they need to do to grow. And so we just create space for them to reconnect with that, who they are and what they need to do to grow. That story is a lot more memorable than me saying, yeah, we put on events. Now, obviously, marketing that hits on all 3 of these, triggers emotions, manages to bring repetition by getting them to engage with the brand and then them seeing the same message in multiple places, and tells a story all at the same time is really quite hard. Well, actually, it's not, because great marketing does that, but it takes a minute to build up that skill set. So here's my challenge for y'all today. Number 1, start looking at your marketing and asking, how can I inject an emotional moment into this campaign? How could I make this funny or touching? How could I spark maybe their sense of justice or excitement about this? How can I get them to look at my marketing and feel some kind of emotion? And I'm not talking about feeling enlightened. If you want them to feel smart by telling an inside joke and then they get it and they feel like they're included, that's great. But too many people try to lean into, I'm going to make them feel smart by giving them education. That's a whole nother issue. The short version is that doesn't really work very well because people only value information from places they trust. And if this is their first experience with your brand, they don't really trust you. Sorry, not to be a jerk. But look at your last piece of marketing you put out. How could you have sparked some kind of emotion in there? This is a skill set you're going to learn, so start asking yourself that every time you build a new piece of marketing, whether that's a post or a video. How can I spark some kind of emotion? Number 2, can you tell a story with your marketing? Instead of just listing benefits or showing people what you do, can you frame what you do as a journey? Tell the story of someone coming in and maybe like initially beginning to work with you and then reaching whatever the end goal is, or can you tell a story of your own journey to get there? Can you tell a story of what it is that you are bringing to the table? And then if you want to lean on that repetition, few quick cues here. Make sure that you have a consistent tagline that you are using, or a sonic signature, or you use similar looking visual cues, whether that is branding, that could be fonts, it could be colors, it could be icons, it could be like our breaking glass for Grow Disrupt, or it could be like our powder poofs for the Stephanie Scheller brand, or the violin for the Stephanie Scheller brand, or it could just be like putting yourself on a background that people can start to recognize the more they watch and engage with your stuff. Marketing magic. Messaging that is memorable comes down to having messaging that is emotional, repetitive, and leans on stories. This is what the brain is programmed to pay attention to. If you like this and you want more neuroscience-based marketing tips and tricks, like and follow.